Don't mind me.
I was just inspecting the statues. Welcome to the Museum of Antiquities. My name is Westin, and tonight I'm excited to present to you the very first episode of our thrilling historical series, A Haunted Night at the Museum. Here at the museum, we have a unique collection of stunning replicas and sculpture from the ancient and medieval worlds. Within this collection, there are a number of beautiful and fascinating pieces that have histories and myths associated with them that are all too fitting for this time of the year. October in Saskatchewan can be a foreboding time. The sun spins ever further away, leaving lengthening shadows and cold winds behind. It is most appropriate then that Halloween often makes its annual appearance on the calendar right when winter makes its chilling approach. Halloween is, after all, a holiday that has been associated with frightful spirits and magic spells. But did you know that some of these beliefs and traditions have roots in antiquity in the Middle Ages, long before anyone ever called it Halloween? The festivals that ancient people celebrated at this time of year didn't have trick-or-treating, plastic masks, or scary movies. In ancient Europe, people like the Celts and Romans had their own traditions that they celebrated as the winter months approached. Many scholars have made the case that ancient festivals like the Celtic Samhain or the Roman Saturnalia may have been just some of the cultural originators of the modern celebration of Halloween, with the day's focus on ghosts and ghouls being only a facet of this lineage. These were harvest festivals, marking the end of the summer and the start of winter. It should not be a surprise then that the ancient Celtic word Samhain meant simply summer's end. These people's lives depended on a good harvest season. Bad weather, blight on the crop, or any number of other uncontrollable factors made agriculture a precarious livelihood. Celtic art often emphasized nature motifs, which shed light on the aspects of nature that Celts found important to their daily life. One Celtic coin within the museum's collection has images that demonstrates this connection to the natural world. This bronze coin was minted sometime between the years 150 and 100 BCE in a place called Ilepens, located near what is now modern Seville, Spain, and where Celtic people once lived long ago. The Celtic focus on nature images can be seen on both sides of the coin, with a head of wheat on the one side called the obverse, and a fish with the crescent moon on the reverse. This coin clearly indicates that the grain of the harvest and fish from nearby lakes and rivers were important to the sustenance and survival of the people of Ilepens. The harvest was so vital to that community that it was worth celebrating on both coins and through festivals. The most important cultural gathering for the ancient Celts centered around the last harvest of the year, which is today remembered as the Celtic Samhain, a celebration that always heralded winter. The ancient Celts associated the coming of the winter months with death and darkness, which should not be surprising when considering the harsh conditions these people would have had to endure. Starvation, illness, and exposure all would have been constant physical threats. And so it seems appropriate that supernatural evil was associated with Samhain since ancient times. Ancient Celts believed that the transition from fall to winter was a time when the spirits of the dead emerged from their graves to make their final journey to the afterlife. It was also believed that spirits could pass into the land of the living from the spirit world on the eve of Samhain. Good and evil spirits alike returned to interact with the living then. To protect themselves from these malign spirits, Celts would build huge bonfires, and some evidence suggests that animal and even human sacrifices occasionally may have been made to ward off this perceived evil. Other scholars posit that these sacrifices may have been done in celebration of a good harvest, as thanks to their deities. Julius Caesar himself spoke of Celts performing these sacrifices before a massive wooden effigy, which is today known as the Wicker Man. Although Caesar's account of Celtic ritual may have been exaggerated, the burning of a wooden figure is now readily associated with Halloween. Some early modern artists created woodcuts depicting these events, which you'll be able to see on screen now. This woodcut from the 18th century shows an artist's idea of what one of these rituals may have looked like. Caesar's own writings portrayed a vivid and haunting description as he tells of the Wicker Man's burning. The nation of all the Gauls is extremely devoted to superstitious rites, and on that account, they who are troubled with unusually severe diseases, and they who are engaged in battles and dangers, either sacrifice men as victims, or vow that they will sacrifice them, and employ the Druids as the performers of those sacrifices, because they think that unless the life of a man can be offered for the life of a man, the mind of the immortal gods cannot be rendered propitious, and they have sacrifices of that kind ordained for national purposes. Others have figures of vast sizes, the limbs of which have formed osiers they fill with living men, which being set on fire, the men perish enveloped in flames. Caesar's accounts, as well as the woodcuts, such as the one shown on screen, help to cement the Wicker Man as something associated with the ancient Celts as well as Halloween. Whatever the reality of the Wicker Man, we know fire ritual was an important part of this ancient celebration. Archaeological sites associated with the Celts and Samhain legends, like the Hill of Ward in Ireland, have provided evidence of large fires. Much of what would have been practiced during these festivals by ancient pagans was forgotten during the Christianization of Europe, either deliberately or incidentally. However, the now Christian Europeans continued to hold celebrations around the end of October, albeit for different reasons, and in a different manner than the ancient Celts. For Christians, the harvest festival became a set of 3 days known as Hallowtide, in which revelers would feast and say prayers for the dead. Bells were rung at the stroke of midnight to herald All Souls' Day as prayers for souls in purgatory. And throughout the Renaissance and the early modern period, the connection these days had with the dead and the paranormal in general was not lost on the secularized Europeans, as many people still believed that spirits and witches could leave their hiding places during this time. By the 18th century, pranks and tricks were being associated with Halloween in England, and the festivities were often combined with that of the 5th of November, a secular celebration called Bonfire Night, where an effigy of the English revolutionary Guy Fawkes was burned. By the 1800s, the name Halloween was already in use, and was synonymous with a time of year when ghosts and ghouls left their graves to terrorize the living, a concept that had already become very popular in works of Western fiction, like Mary Shelley's Dr. Frankenstein or Bram Stoker's Dracula. Some of these spooky traditions would eventually be transported to North America by the large number of Irish immigrants who arrived during the 19th century. And as the century turned and modernity excelled its pace, ballroom parties replaced outdoor harvest festivals in many places, and many of the spiritual traditions that have pervaded the time of year grew less and less popular. The early 20th century North America saw Halloween become an infamous time of pranks and vandalism, when rowdy young people were known to roam the streets doing all sorts of mischief. It wasn't all tricks though, as treats too became a large part of the Halloween experience. Communities began throwing annual parties and dances to celebrate Halloween, and children would have already been scouring neighborhoods in their costumes for candy by the start of World War I. These modern inventions are a far cry from the fires of Samhain, and yet you never have to look far around Halloween to see ghosts, ghouls, and goblins popping up as front lawn decorations. And so, we can see that the frightful festivities of today have their roots in ancient ideas and spirituality. Many things have changed, and yet people have not shaken off their fascination with the paranormal, even if our ghosts seem a little less conspicuous. For ancient people like the Celts, fantastical spirits like ghosts, demons, and elves were very real. Studying these attitudes allow historians to gain insight into the lives of people who lived very differently to us, and yet participated in cultural events that survive in one form or another to this very day. For our next Haunted Night in the museum, we'll be looking at some of the incredible and very spooky ancient Egyptian artifacts held within our collection. Stay tuned for another exciting episode where we'll learn about guardian spirits, treasures from ancient tombs, and even a portal to the afterlife. Happy Halloween!